with Toffees.
Let's do this!
And welcome back to Coffee with Toffees, guys. It's time for another episode on this Wednesday night, the 11th, and I'm excited to be bringing you all the Dota news that you need, or interviews and content creators and all of that fun stuff. As you know, we've been expanding the show to do sort of a community showcase. I've been introducing you to streamers, cosplayers, and we're going to have a brand new feature here where we talk to a content creator. And when we say content creator, I'm not talking about a YouTuber. I'm not talking about somebody like me who makes podcasts. I'm talking about someone who actually creates content that you use in the game on a regular basis. But before we get to that, I do have to talk a little bit about our sponsor, Namecheap.com. They are bringing you the show tonight, and they're a domain registrar that cares about internet freedom and esports. So go check them out and register our new domain at Namecheap.com today. That said, guys, you can find me at Toffees_Dota2, and I will put this out here. This is the last show of the current contract with Namecheap, so I go back to funding myself as of next month. So if you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/Toffees and throw $1 at the show and keep us running, hosting costs and all that fun stuff as we move forward with this. Now, the person joining me here today is someone who probably needs no introduction, and that's partly because her name is incredibly difficult to say, at least for somebody like me who maybe doesn't pronounce things normally, and that is AnuxinaMoon. Yes, I think I got that. AnuxinaMoon.
It's like that chick from The Mummy with all the painted tattoos on her.
Okay, is that where you actually got the name from?
Yeah, that's actually where I got the name from.
Nice. I was going to ask you that, so we jumped to that ahead. So she got the name from The Mummy, but you'll probably know her as the creator of some pretty important sets, some of the most famous of which are the Snowdrop's Crystal Maiden, the Equine Emissary, that's the Legion Commander, Night Silver Sentinel, Beaver Knight, and of course the immortal Shagbark. These are all sets or couriers that you've probably used on a regular basis, or if you're like me, have seen Shagbark and Beaver Knight run by on the field and gone, man, I wish I could afford that one. So it's pretty exciting to have you here. I'm excited about learning about a side of Dota that I have no experience with. So thank you for coming on the show tonight.
No worries, man. Hope I can be of some kind of information hub.
I'm sure that you will be. And just to be clear, I think it's like, what is it, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon over there?
No, it's like 12:30 at lunchtime.
Wow.
And I haven't yeah.
So we'll try to keep it short so that you can get some lunch. And I appreciate middle of the day. It's tough all the way over here in North America to get you folks from down under to come on the show. That said, though, let's talk a little bit about you before we get into talking about things like set design and lore and all that fun stuff, because I got some great questions for you there. But I want to start out by knowing a little bit about you, kind of where you come from as an artist and how you found yourself in Dota 2.
Oh God, where do you want me to start?
All right, so let's start with your third birthday. No, I'm kidding. Let's go back to sort of do you work full time right now, making sets essentially, or doing artwork?
Yeah, well, it's kind of hard to say full time. I've cut down my hours quite a lot. Okay. Even before I was working on Dota 2, I was only working 2 weeks out of the month. So I was semi-retired by then anyway. But once Dota 2 hit, I ramped up my production to like about 12 hours a day, 5 days, 6 days a week.
Wow.
And then obviously after a set was made, I'd have like a couple of days off, and then I'd just start again. And I did that for about longer than that. 8 months?
Okay.
9 months? Yeah.
And that was when you first jumped into Dota 2. Now, from what I understand, you worked for some other game companies before joining Dota 2, in-house, and then sort of got involved through some sort of competition that got you into Dota 2. So can we talk a little about where you were before and how you found Dota 2?
Yeah, sure. Well, after my, I'll start from the beginning, from where I went to tertiary education, which was, I did a diploma, which was 1 year, and it wasn't even in like game art that much. It was like a diploma of screen, which was specializing in animation. So I wasn't actually, the course I was doing wasn't even that tailored to game art, and but I really wanted to make games. So after school, instead of continuing my degree, I decided to do freelance art as a way to get my foot in the door into the game industry. And I was really lucky at the time because I met my ex-husband at the diploma course. He did the programming diploma course, so we teamed up and we made this outsourcing company. And for about 3 years, we did a whole bunch of video game art. And probably the most influential one was the Stargate.
Okay.
I made the Stargate art for Stargate: The Alliance.
Okay.
And one of the models that I worked on was actually used on the show, which was really cool.
Wow, that's pretty sweet. And then I read somewhere, I think, that you worked on Rift as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So after doing three years of freelancing, we went and worked at Fuzzy Eyes in Brisbane, which is like a really independent company. After the crash of like 2008, we found ourselves without a job. So we worked on our folios for a year, and then got picked up by Tryon, moved over to San Fran, lived there for 2 years, worked on Rift, shipped Rift, worked on the live game. Then we came back to Australia, did more freelancing, and it was in that 18 months after Rift that the Dota 2 thing happened.
Wow. So Tryon actually took you out to San Francisco. So you got to spend 2 years living out there. How was your 2 years in San Francisco?
It was pretty cool, actually. I really liked it. Most of it was working because the first 8 months was trying to crunch for gold, for the gold disc. So it was all about shipping the game and then working on the live game and then working on the patch and then, oh shit, we have to go home kind of thing.
Interesting.
It was only an 18-month visa or something like that. So.
Wow. So that's cool. It's also cool to think about, like, I think I was I did alpha testing for Rift and was part of the early adoption group who then left.
Really?
Yeah, who then left right after it came out because of some breakage stuff. But
yeah.
Tryon after the fact was an issue, but the game was beautiful when it first came out. Like I loved that. So knowing that I'm now talking to somebody who designed something I had the pleasure of alpha testing is actually really cool.
That's sick. Were you in the friends and family, or were you in the alpha?
I was in
or were you in the beta?
Yeah, alpha into beta. So right before, I think I got second alpha wave or something like that. For those of you who are listening, or those of you who listen to the show a lot, I shall clear this up and say that I have probably alpha'd or early beta'd every single MMO that's been released since EverQuest. So that was what I played before Dota. Is I'm an MMO junkie, and every time I send my application now, they just go, "You've played how many MMOs at alpha?" Like, okay, we'll use you. So it's sort of we hit that. I was 13, I think, when I played my first MMO and have never stopped. So right, a little bit of a side background. But that's pretty cool. So you did that. You moved back to Australia, and then you got involved with Dota 2 through some sort of competition?
Yeah, there was TF2 had a competition with Polycount in the early workshop days to kickstart the workshop. So Valve decided to do that again with Dota 2. So Dota 2 got in contact with Polycount, and they organized a Dota 2 workshop competition. Valve already had all the documentation online ready for you, and you just had to. And it's a really good way for any workshop to get started. Like I think Chivalry also did the same thing.
Makes sense.
Did a Polycount contest, and the winners just got picked. And even Riot's done Polycount contests as well. Polycount's a pretty huge game art hub, and very famous for its competitions.
So you started out with the Enchantress set, which I'm trying to remember the name of that one right now. It was the.
I think it was the Wildkin.
Wildkin Charm, I think, is what it was called. So that was the one with the wings around her waist, if I remember correctly. So let me ask you, in hindsight, as somebody who's now created some of the most iconic sets, I don't even think arguably, I think you've created some of the most iconic sets and couriers in the game right now. What do you think when you look back at that set, your first set designing for Dota?
I had absolutely no idea what I'm doing. That's pretty much it. And I knew that. I knew that coming into the competition. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to be doing. And I am going to need to, like, throw as much shit as possible at this wall until it sticks. And that was my plan. It was just to like, do... Like, I was like, the first one's going to fail. The second one's going to fail. The third one's going to fail. Hopefully the fourth one doesn't fail. And maybe if I have time, I'll have a fifth. And it was end up being the fifth one, which was Snowdrop. And the Snowdrop won the competition. Well, in the top 10 anyway. Right.
And now Snowdrop is the Crystal Maiden set. Yes. That is, I think, the biggest icon of it is either the half feather, I don't know if you're going to call it a feather hat, or maybe the giant, is it the gems that are on the hands too?
Yes.
Yep.
There's gems on the hands, gems everywhere.
Gems everywhere. So pretty recognizable. A fairly popular hero, my favorite, so obviously that's why I know this set. And from there on, we kind of went into some bigger items. what kept you, I should say, working with Dota 2? So you came on in sort of a contest, you got in the top 10, that's great, and now you're still designing for Dota 2. Why stick with it?
Because I played the goddamn game. Someone gave me one of those early keys. And I was like, oh yeah, I should probably play this hero, Enchantress. Okay, let's look up some guides. And then I'd look up a guide, and it was really basic. And because I'd hop into the game and I'd play it, and I'm like, I have no idea how to play this hero. Better find a guide. Found a guide. I was like, okay, I think I know how to play this hero. And then I just was like, I kept losing because I just jumped straight in. Like I wouldn't do bot matches. I was like, bot matches are for pussies. So I just jumped in, like fed a whole bunch. And I think there was like this one guide that told me how to jungle efficiently, and I was jungling, and then I was like, hey, I'm in the Radiant jungle. There's like jungles over the river, and they're bigger and stronger, and they give me more money. So I just like, at level 3, I'd just be farming Dire Ancients as Enchantress, uncontested, and I'd be building like S and Y and stuff, and she'd be like, yeah, this is the best, and yeah, I was addicted.
So you started,
from there, I'm like, oh my
you
God.
started playing before the design contest or after the design contest?
No, during the design contest.
Okay. So you basically started designing sets, and then we're like, well, I guess I should try out the game. And then, like all of us, once you're in, you're sort of just stuck.
Yeah.
Do you still play a lot, or do you find yourself focusing more on design side of things?
I try to play a lot. But the queues in Australia kind of give me the shits. So I'd just be queuing for a ranked game, and it would take like 10 minutes, so I'd just give up. That
makes sense. I can understand that. My heart goes out to you. I work with the 4 States guys every once in a while, and they always talk about the servers over there. So queues in Aussie, that's a bummer.
Especially in my bracket, it's the worst.
What is your bracket, if you don't mind telling us?
2.8.
That's good. That's good. So what? I wonder why it's bad over there. Is just everybody in Australia like the 1Ks? So
I don't know. Well, I've noticed that if you play on certain days, which correlate to like Centrelink being paid out, which is like welfare. You get all the crazy bogans that just bring you down.
Interesting. So they go to like the LAN cafes?
I don't know what it is. It's just, oh god.
That's rough.
So I don't play rank that much anymore.
So in an interview that you did with White Elephant a while back ago, you told him, right? I want to go on. I want to say this. Finding past interviews that you've done, and like normally I'm known for sort of my pre-research before interviews, was insanely difficult. There was like an interview you did on YouTube, TI3, I think, with I think the gentleman was Indian, and I had to like get some of the stuff translated, and then there was the talk with White Elephant. Now, you told him that Snowdrop Queen was your favorite set. Is that still the case, or is there something since then that's sort of taken your fancy?
It is definitely the Scotty Morphling set.
Scotty Morphling?
For Era. That's hands down my favorite set.
Okay. So that's, I was just curious about that.
Not in the game. Not in the game.
Not in the, are we waiting for it to come into the game, or what's the,
I'm just waiting. Yeah, we Valve told us to fix some stuff. So I fixed it, and then since then we haven't heard anything.
So explain to us a little bit, and so the reason I really wanted you on the show, other than the fact that I adore some of your stuff, Beaver Knight was one of the ones that I was like, I gotta get her on because I love Beaver Knight. And then I just realized, like, it literally clicked in my head 10 minutes ago that you also did Shagbark, and I think I crapped a little bit of a brick and fanboyed for a second. That said, I thought it'd be really great to have you on here to talk about the process, because we cover a lot of pro tournaments, we cover a lot of pro news, and we talk a lot about hats and how they influence tournaments and how they're big money makers, and sort of literally I cannot have a conversation with a pro or a organizer without the discussion mentioning hats, and I want to know how that process works. So in the instance of this Morphling set, sort of how does that go from drawing board to game, and like what does that sort of look like for you?
Okay, so it all starts with getting the contact between... Well, this is specifically with Scotty Morphling, because we worked with Era. Okay. And working with a pro player is completely different than just working on your own. I don't know which side of the story you want.
Well, let's start with the pro player, since we're on the topic, and then we'll probably ask you about the other side too.
Yeah. It's kind of roughly the same. It's just my side, it's just I do whatever I want. But with the pro player, we talked to them, and it was me and Danny. So Danny talked with Era a lot, and we bounced back ideas about what he would like with the Morphling set, and then Danny would sketch out some ideas, show them to Era, Ira would be like, I like this one more, and I want it to be more aggressive, or I want it to be more streamlined and this kind of thing. So that takes a bit of a while, and then Danny finally busts out a sketch, and that we all like it, and then I'm like, yep, easy, and I just bash it out in ZBrush, and then I send it off to Ira, and I said, this is what it's looking like. Danny, is this the shapes that you want, kind of thing? And he's like, yes, and Ira's like, looks cool. Usually I don't get any complaints, but sometimes I do. And then, yeah, just bash it out from there. It's really easy. It's just high poly, block out, then high poly polish, which is just refining, adding all the details, and then make the in-game mesh, which is a really low poly version, unwrap, texture it, test it in the game a lot, and yeah, hope it works.
All right, so that was 90% French, but from what I get, there's a lot of computer work that goes in. So it sounds like you have a sketch artist who helps put the ideas together, and then your job is to then take that and put it into 3D form to bring to us in the game. Now, when you work with a pro, is that because? So how does paying out work? How does like sort of all of that stuff? Why work with a pro versus just do it yourself?
I work with pros because I know that, one, I want to help the pro scene be sustainable, and helping pros can do that. Two, many pros just want their own set in the game. Like, they want a piece of themselves to show off and call their own. And I think it's a really good honor, a good way to honor them as entertainers and professionals by giving them that. And then, yeah, it's not really about the marketing. A lot of people are like, oh, but it's the exposure. I'm like, well, there's people out there that already have enough exposure that they don't really need to do pro player stuff. It's just for the love of the scene and like the pro player that we do this stuff. So yeah, me and Danny Dam, Thiago, and a few others are just willing to like just go out, and Bronto Thunder's another one is just really happy to do pro player sets because we just love the scene. Yeah.
So it's not that is it easier to get Valve to pick it up if there's a pro player's name attached to it, or is it really not a factor for somebody like you who's done a bunch of sets previously?
Nah, it's okay, so here's the priority with hats and Valve.
Okay.
If you're a tournament hat, you're at the top. Everything else is then equal.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's no easy way in with pro players. It's just
okay. And then do you then split the profits for the hats with the pro players, or
yes.
Okay, so it's a way for them to make a little bit of cash. Yeah. So really, I mean, to be completely honest, when you do a pro player's hat, it's like you said, you supporting the scene, because technically you could probably just release it on your own and not have to share the profits.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like anything really. Like I could do tournament items and get my stuff in the game faster,
right?
And then have to give up a share of the profits, or I could just do it on my own and just hope that it'd go in, and if it does, I get all of the profits, kind of thing. Whereas with the pro player, I am sacrificing a lot without any priority, without any like extra thing, except possibly some marketing for votes and stuff on the workshop.
Now, I feel like I saw a while back ago, were you working on like a Navi somebody set? Or do you ever get asked to do like a team player set combo, if that makes sense?
A lot of teams have actually come to me and asked for team sets. So I've had Navi, EG, Fnatic. Fnatic was the first ones to come to me. They wanted Fnatic shirts on some Dota heroes. And I was like, no, that sounds terrible. But I don't know anything about Pro Dota, so I'll follow you guys. And that was before DreamHack 2012 winter.
Gotcha.
And I think that was their second DreamHack in Dota 2, or maybe their first. But it was really cool. I really love that. DreamHack actually got me into DreamHack Winter 2012 got me into Pro Dota.
Right, it's always a tournament. Every time I talk to somebody, they're like, "When did you get into Dota?" They're like, "Well, I started playing it and I liked it, and then I watched this tournament, and that's when I got sucked into Dota." So that's kind of cool to hear. Do you ever have an instance where you start working on like a pro set and then the pro sort of disappears or falls off the scene or gets traded away into nothingness, or has that never had been an issue for you?
I haven't had that issue personally. I'm not sure if other artists have had that issue, but they're usually like when I'm talking with a pro player, they're on my Skype. If they like delete me from Skype, then yeah, that's a problem. But that hasn't happened.
Fair, fair. Okay, so now let's talk about. You said you could do tournament stuff. I don't know if Valve gag orders you, if you're allowed to talk about things like how the payout goes. Now I know that like when I work with a tournament and we sell a ticket, we get a percentage of the overall ticket price. Then another percentage goes to Valve, and then if I work for a tournament that has a set designer, we have a pre-negotiated percentage of our ticket percentage that goes to the set designer. If you drop your own item and it gets picked up, what percentage of the item actually goes to you guys, and what does Valve take home with them?
So the original contract was up to 25% of a set item and an undisclosed amount from a chest. A chest item. Yeah, and then the agreement was changed, I think, after TI3. And this actually came up in a Skype conversation a couple of days ago with the other artists, and some artists were saying, hey, how come I was getting, say, this percent, which is quite a low percentage, from this chest, and then I'm getting the regular 25% from the recent chest.
Right.
And the only thing I could work out was that was when the agreement changed. Like all the single item chests up until that point were this low percentage, because technically in the contract it didn't say chest items were to be sold for the 25.
Did they decide what goes in a chest?
Yes, Valve does everything to do with the store.
So basically, you submit an item, and they could say, this is cool, we want to release it as a solo, or they could say, we're going to toss this in a chest for some small, a small release, and nobody may ever see this, and that's 100% up to them.
Yeah, and a good example is when my Snowdrop set was released. I think a month later, they did like a summer bundle or something, or a summer sale on on Dota 2 beta. So you could buy the Dota 2 beta key and get my Snowdrop bundled with it for only $8. And I think Snowdrop on the store at the time by itself was $12. So it was like a huge sort of, everyone was like, oh, let's buy this because it's so good value. So I was like, okay.
So was that good for you or was that bad for you?
I don't know. I was asked that the other day by one of the other guys on Polycount, and I said I don't actually have the sales data for that because it was bundled with something else. So.
Interesting. So it sounds like it's something that Valve has a lot of control over, which is strange because when you talk to the pro players in the tournament scene, all you hear us do is complain about how Valve has no control over the tournament process. But when it comes to hats, it sounds like they're iron-fisted in a lot of ways. Do you think that that's helping or hurting the design of the cosmetic scene?
I don't know if it's hurting the design, but it's definitely hurting the flow. So there's a huge bottleneck, and that's Valve. And so a lot of the frustration right now in the workshop is artists, thousands of artists submitting really good stuff to the workshop, and maybe 2 or 3 getting in a week or something like that on average. So, and then those 2 or 3, 2 of them are most probably tournament items. So artists are now like, oh, we have to get bundled with tournaments to get priority in the queue to get looked at by Valve so that we get our stuff in the store, because really good sets aren't cutting it anymore. Getting in, it's just not enough. There's not enough throughput from Valve from workshop to store to allow the workshop to actually function smoothly.
Okay. Now, do you think that that's good in a sense because it prevents oversaturation, so that when your set does make it to the store, it's purchased on a larger scale than, say, if 3 Crystal Maiden sets all hit at the same time?
Well, Valve's really good at that. Valve, at the beginning, was always like, we don't want to release too many sets of the same hero around the same time. And they were really good originally, like back in 2013, in early 2014, they'd release sets like maybe 5 a fortnight, so maybe 10 sets a month or 15 sets a month, and about 20 or so single items, and there was no oversaturation that I thought that I encountered, and it was a very healthy environment. The turnaround for workshop artists, they could make a single item and as a test, and then they'd see that go through, and then that would encourage them to possibly make a set or make more items. But now I've had pro like devs and stuff come to me and say, "Oh, do you think the workshop is viable?" And I'm like, "It was."
Right.
Like I'd be like, "Oh yeah, just make a single item, see how you like the sales, see how you like the process, get used to it, and then go from there." But they just make something and it doesn't get in, so they get disheartened and they leave.
Well, and there's not really items anymore, right? Everything's pretty much set based. So now the investment's significantly higher than it used to be on
Yeah.
the front end.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
It's like 2 weeks of your time or 3 weeks of your time for like a much bigger gamble now than it used to be.
Intriguing. That's interesting. So what I'm going to do is I got a couple of good Reddit questions, and I'm going to start to weave them in a little bit. And this is one I thought was sort of goes along with what we're talking about. A gentleman named The Other Side asked, he said, he said they are, and I changed a little bit. Are cosmetic designers and players / tournaments a little bit at war? He said it used to seem like everybody worked together to help Dota grow, but lately tournaments have been unable to find quality artists to cooperate with anymore. Do you think that statement is true?
I don't know about at war. Maybe for a few artists. I don't know. But a lot of the thing is just a frustration on a whole with the communication from Valve. And it's not really with tournaments or with pro players, it's just that bottleneck that I was talking about.
Right.
From the workshop to the store, it all has to go through Valve. And if Valve is swamped with tournament requests and tournament hats, obviously they'll get those done first. Everyone else sort of falls to the wayside. And that's where a lot of the frustration comes from. So artists kind of feel like they have to do tournaments in a way, but they don't want to give up a lot of their percentage or whatever, or they have one bad like tournament experience and then they just hate everything else kind of thing.
Right.
And it sucks, because not all tournaments are the same. Not all of them are organized terribly.
Right.
I've heard really good things about like BTS, the summit, and ESL and other things like that. But then I've also heard really bad things from the smaller tournaments, or like just like miscommunication because of the language barrier and stuff like that.
Well, it also sounds like I know that I worked for a tournament once where we had a set designer who put a ton of work into like creating a ward to go along with the ticket, and everything was submitted I think 2 months in advance, and then a week before the ticket came out, Valve came back and said, well, the ward needs to change, and it just wasn't enough time to get the artists and the tournament to sit down, make the changes, and get it resubmitted, so it never actually made it into the game. And then I said, that really stinks for the guy who spent 2 weeks of his life designing this thing, hoping to make some money off of it, and then it just got completely kiboshed from the game. Is that something that you hear about happening a lot in the creator community, or is that sort of a rarity?
Yeah, actually, I did a thread on Polycount asking other artists about their experience with tournaments and that sort of thing. And I said, one of the first questions that I put was, is it easier as an artist to get your stuff in the game through tournaments? And a lot of people were like, no, it's not, because I've had like tournament experiences where I make an item and then Valve just outright rejects it because they didn't like it or this kind of thing, or they make you make changes. So it's quite hard on that point. But it was like a two sort of pronged question. It's like, if you meet those requirements, then is it easier to get into the game? And because of the priority system, yeah.
Right. Interesting.
Because of the quality thing, Valve try and adhere to like a certain quality standard, so they're pretty good with that kind of stuff.
Do you feel like, and it sounds like in the question he's saying it's harder for tournaments now to find, and sure when he says this, he probably means maybe some of the smaller tournaments, to find quality artists to sign on with them. And it sounds to me like that's sort of a byproduct of, for instance, you've proven yourself as a creator. I'm sure that when you submit something to Valve and it's sort of like this pool of creators before the bottleneck, they have names they look for to move to the top of the list. Sort of like, Michael Jordan is always going to be respected if he shows up for a pickup game of basketball. And why would somebody who has established credentials give up 50% of their potential take to a tournament when they can just get it in otherwise? So it sounds like tournament items are really sort of catering to newer, younger, more upcoming designers who are trying to make a name for themselves.
It's really good for people who don't have items on the store at all, but have a lot of workshop items to go through tournaments. and as long as they meet the quality standard, they can get through.
So, is there a place now to all of my tournament watchers? Like, I have a lot of people who listen to the show that are involved with tournaments or organization where they can go. Because I imagine when they sit down and say, "I want an item set," they probably immediately send you a message. They send a couple of specific people a message and say, "Hey, are you interested?" And chances are it's going to be a no. Is there a place where they can go that there's like a comprehensive list of, say, up and coming designers looking for that opportunity, or is it how do you find these as a tournament organizer?
There's a couple of threads on the Polycount Dota 2 subreddit, whatever it's called, and it's called I made it ages ago because people would always come to me and say, "Hey, can you do items?" I'm like, "No, I can't. I'm really busy," and I'd have to like sort of go, "Hey, I can try and find you someone," and in the end, it was too much. It was too much work for me to like keep forwarding people over. So I made a thread on Polycount. Do you want me to send it to you on Skype?
Yeah, absolutely. And that way, so guys, if you're listening to this and you're an organizer and you're looking for some people, get in contact with me. I'll save this info. I'll put it up I'll mention it here on the show, but I can send it to you anytime you want. So folks who do know me, I'll absolutely get you in touch. But why don't you make Ryan Editor get involved with this and run a small referral business? So say he'll track everybody and you guys can judge up and coming artists, and a tournament can pay you, I don't know, a finder's fee of $50 to put them together with a good artist. I'm just saying, Ryan, get out, make some extra cash, buddy. Extra cash.
Yeah, it could totally work. Like I do it all for free. Like I hook pro players up with artists every day, and that's pretty much a lot of my work these days. Takes up a lot of time. Skyping and emailing and organizing stuff and make sure like pro players would be like, "I haven't heard from this artist in like 2 months." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll chase up." And or this artist is like, "I can't get in contact with this pro player." So I'm like, "Okay, I'll try and chase it up." So that's actually a lot of my work.
So you heard it here.
And I don't
first,
get
guys.
anything from it either. Like I just do it for free.
So she's a very nice person, but I'm not gonna, if you contact her and maybe throw some cash on the table, find yourself a good artist. I'm just saying, it's a business opportunity. That's all Toffees ever thinks about, business. Okay, so let's keep rolling forward with this. In an interview, you said that you thought color was the most important part of item creation. Do you still believe that? And if so, why is that the case?
Yeah, I think the color is the texture. And the texture of any model, anywhere, will always be the most important part of the model besides the animation. So the animation obviously comes last, but yeah. If your textures are shit, your model is ruined. Like, you could have the best sculpt, the most detail ever, it doesn't matter. Like, if you paint your textures bad, or the colors don't work together, they don't work with the hero, they don't work with the environment the hero's in, it's just... Yeah, it takes a good set to a bad set, like instantly.
Interesting. What do you think about particle effects? Is that something that everybody is allowed to put in on everything? Is that something where Valve comes to you and says, "Hey, could you add particles to this particular set?" Like, how does that work in the scheme of creation?
Particles, I don't actually have any experience with particles except with Era's Morphling set, where I got Thiago, TV Dodo, to actually make some for the waveform. But Valve's never asked me to put particles on except for like the ones that already come, like the anti-mage blades.
Right.
You can add like a mesh that has already predefined particles.
Gotcha.
So it was all the particles will be the same. It's just where you put them, and then that's the amount of particle customization that I have control of. People like Dota Effects that actually go in and make their own custom particles and stuff like that, I don't know how to do.
And now, so these big Arcanas that are released that cost an arm and a leg, who makes those? And is that something where Valve goes specifically to a designer and says, "Here's what we want, here's the technology to do it, get it done"?
No, Arcanas are only ever made by Valve.
Okay, so Valve
No, because
makes
we
those
actually
themselves.
me and Danny Dan wanted to make an Arcana for, I can't remember, Potom? We wanted to make a Potom Arcana, but Valve were like, "No, Arcanas are done by us." So we're like,
Intriguing.
"Oh, okay."
So not only do they take, it's not, 60% of the item cuts, but they also will not allow you guys to make Arcanas. So it sounds like Valve is pretty serious bones about making money off of hats. That's impressive. Okay, so moving forward, talking about the tournaments. Ewok's Kick asks, do you think artists are being exploited by tournaments with ticket bundles, or do you think that the relationship is healthy and mutually beneficial?
It just depends on the tournaments again. Like
Okay.
there are some tournaments that will go up to an artist and say, look, if you bundle with our small tournament of like 10K and you can get into the game. It's a lot of good exposure for you. It'll sell lots of tickets and you'll probably get a good return kind of thing. And the artist is like, and here's the percentage we're going to give you, 15. And the artist is like, what? And it's like, one, the exposure, not really.
Right.
If you're a tiny tournament, you're not going to get much exposure because the tournament isn't going to pull the numbers that is needed to sell the tickets or like the only good thing is that you will get fast tracked into the store if you have a good quality item.
Okay.
Right now for artists, if you're just looking at this like as like a thing, what is going to benefit me the most, and that's only that. It's nothing else, which is kind of sucks.
Interesting. So it kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier with the fact that tournament tickets and items sort of do cater to up-and-coming artists does expose them a little bit to the potential for exploitation.
Yeah.
Okay. Because
a little bit. But it's kind of hard. Like the older artists that have been around the scene a bit or have done freelance before and know all the tricks that come with like sort of trying to win them over, they won't fall for that kind of stuff.
Right.
But the newer guys, they'd be more inclined to probably go, oh yeah, it is more exposure, it is more this, so they can get. And it's just an experience thing. Everyone needs to go through it at one point.
So speaking of that, the new guys in the old guard and all that fun stuff, how is I assume that you have your own micro community of creators. How is that? I mean, like if you compare it to casting, in the sense of there's the old school casters and the famous guys, and there's like the mid-tier guys who sort of came about a year, 2-ish to more years ago, and then the big influx of new amateur casters. You know, everyone sort of gets along, but there's also sort of competition to keep the other guy down so that you can maybe get your payments for doing stuff. Is it sort of like that in the content creator community, or is it very loving and I'll help you get in? Because with the bottleneck of items, it feels like the atmosphere would cater towards a little bit of a dog-eat-dog system of design.
It actually is. Like when we were first beginning, because of that bottleneck, back in 2012, 2013, because the bottleneck was at a point which fostered growth, like the single items growth, the set items growth, and because of the amount of items that would get into the game, it was just about like helping each other and doing the best you possibly could. And that's why we saw a lot of the really good quality stuff in like 2013, like that huge jump in quality in 2013. But now is very much about, well, and then it started to get into like, oh, it's who you know kind of thing, and the networks you could provide, that you could connect yourself with to get tournament items or pro player stuff. But yeah, it's all because of the bottleneck that there's a lot of frustration in the workshop community, and we're all pretty good. Like on Polycount, you'll still get people giving feedback, like just because artists always want to grow,
Right.
anyway, so there's always that challenge and that feedback and that community aspect, but it is quite a lot less than it was originally. And a lot of people have voiced their opinions to me and said, look, it's really sad that it's not like that anymore, and I wish it was back the way it was. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but like the current climate of the workshop where less things get in, and the things that do get in are from people who've made alliances or negotiations and that sort of thing. It then obviously segregates a lot of the people up into sections, but I try not to get into that sort of stuff too much. I just try and like make it so the workshop is sustainable enough so that more new people can get in. The people who are already in can actually keep doing what they want to do because they're obviously very good at it and they love what they do. So that environment, like the workshop on the whole, I want to keep good. And the only way I can do that is doing what I do and trying not to step on too many toes.
I mean, it makes sense. I think it's unfortunate that the environment has done that, but at the end of the day, I think it's what happened with most businesses as they expand. New people come in, you have to compete for positions. So that's interesting. Good to hear. Now, we've seen a huge growth of ticket prices, compendiums, the idea that in the old days I could buy a ticket for a tournament and maybe it would have an item, maybe it wouldn't. But even with an item, I'd pay $3.99 or $4 for it. And now I can't seem to get my hands on a ticket without paying $9.99 at the bottom end. Do you think that's a symptom of needing to pay everybody so the prices have gone up significantly, or is that just a lot of, I mean, is it greed? Is it set designers needing money? Is it tournaments just trying to cash in? What's causing these prices to skyrocket?
Yeah, it's definitely the hat bundling. It's 100%, and it's not because it's not even like, even if it was, it's because of the old school days. So I kind of feel responsible for the whole like hat bundling thing. I know like the defense kind of did it first, but with TPL we did the QWOP thing. I did the QWOP evolving set, and Valve emailed us and said, hey, you know what we could do? Because the QWOP set is so fucking good, we could put that on the store for $12 and then sell the ticket for like $2. And that way, Anuxi will make a whole lot more money,
Right.
and then TPL will also make money as well. And then TPL was like, no, I want to bundle it with the ticket kind of thing, because it's better for the growth of the scene. Like we're rebuilding our tournament structure, and we want to get people in buying the ticket to get excited. And I was like, I kind of agree, because I want the scene to grow. And I was like, I'm gonna lose out so much money if I agree, but I agreed anyway.
Oh no!
So, because I thought it would be good, like, for the scene to have tickets selling, like, so they're like, okay, we'll sell the ticket at like $9 or $10, and we'll see how it goes. And I was like, yeah, that sounds cool, whatever. And then it started from that. I was like, no, what did I do? So I thought it was a good thing, but it ended up being pretty shit. Like, well, I would rather it be tickets being sold for the $2 and then supplementary items like the Summit chest being the content, the optional content that you could get to fund the prize pool.
No, and so guys, take note. If you want to blame someone for paying $10 to watch a tournament on Dota TV, it is this young lady here. That said, though, I think that it's a shame, because I think that was actually would have been a great idea. I'd love to see a combo that's not forced, right? Like the idea that you create an evolving set for watching certain tournament games, but the ticket can still be sold separately to inspire people to buy the ticket to evolve, but they don't have to buy the combo, or things of that nature. But let's be honest, most of the Dota TV tickets sold today are sold because of hats. Like there's not a lot of reason, unless you're running something like Dota FM or you're broadcasting on your own so that you don't copyright infringe, to not watch Twitch instead, because of the production value benefits there. So I get why it happens. There's not a lot we can do about it, other than those of us who are purists and love Dota TV because we like to watch everything that Aki does. That's sort of the sad part, but it makes sense from a fiscal point, so I can't argue with it. Do you think, and Arc Warden asked this on Reddit, do you think that the overall quality of items in the workshop has been decreasing or increasing?
Quality always increases because of the nature of the competition between artists. Artists always want to get better. Like you'll never like get a good artist and say, hey, your art is really, really good, but can you like just take it down a notch? Like, can you just drop it quality level? And be just like, fuck you, dude. And then they'll just be like, I'm gonna make the best thing ever. So yeah, quality will always go up. It's just the bottleneck thing kind of hampers a lot of the real sort of creativity in a way, because now it's like the really, really crazy stuff is getting in, so I should make really, really crazy stuff too, so I can get in, because that's obviously what sells, right?
So that takes me to a good question. How do you feel? And maybe I'm wrong. You've been doing this longer than I have. I feel that in the last year, even Dota 2's items in the workshop have departed severely from acceptable lore items to this will be fun. And it sort of started, everybody was talking about, like, I think it was the Aussie bristleback or something with the hat that was sort of like the start of this whole thing, but it was funny because bristleback is sort of an Aussie, or however you want to say that. And lately it's gone to just sort of ridiculous couriers, items that don't fit the world at all. Do you agree? Do you think that it's moving away from the lore, and is that a problem or is that a good thing?
Oh, it's been moving away from the lore for a long time. Like, I rarely design to the lore now, and I haven't been for quite a while. As long as it sort of fits the universe, I'm not too fussed. But if it, because the lore is so weak that it's like there's only so much you can do with it before everything becomes repetitious. So you kind of have to branch out, creating new storylines and new backgrounds and new alternate sort of character profiles for heroes. That's fine. When you take that out of the universe of Dota 2, not so fine. Or when it gets so bad that it conflicts with the gameplay, that's when I have a problem with it. If I have a problem with, say, a set that makes my Luna look like Potom, or makes my Potom look like Luna, that's when I have like a little bit of a problem, because people can then complain and stuff like that. But
right. Well, I mean, I think there was a Potom set where they changed the animation of the arrow, right, which sort of made it harder to track when you have a habit of watching something.
It's so funny. The jizz arrow?
Yeah. Which people argue was easier to see, so they stopped using it. But for me, like, I trained myself to fear the arrow, and all of a sudden I see a different animation, and I just didn't respond as quickly. But then there's the other side of things, which I think there was a courier that was sort of a old witch riding a broom sort of courier, which, where does that fit in the Dota 2 world? Do you think that that's a byproduct of, and as somebody asked this on Reddit, do you think that the shop is going to crash and burn because concepts are getting repetitive and there's just too much out there? Is that what is leading us away from lore, or is it just marketability?
There's always going to be new ideas and new concepts, so there's no real problem of repetitive sort of ideas, but the couriers are special because you can kind of really do anything with couriers as long as they don't mess with your gameplay too much. Okay. Like, if they don't look like a hero, or they don't look like a neutral creep, or they don't look like a Beastmaster Boar, well, they don't anymore because the little icon.
Right.
But, you know, it's stuff like that, it's fine. Like, couriers are, like, acceptable to be ridiculous, I think. As much of ridiculous as you possibly could get within the confines of the lore. Even the Nexon courier with the little anime girl holding... Yeah. I didn't... Like, to me, that was pretty much the edge of the envelope for, as far as...
Okay. Like,
it was plausible that it could be part of Dota 2, but it's not, and it was fine. Like, I didn't mind that courier that much. But so, even that stupid parrot on the skateboard, I love that courier. I love it so
I could see a parrot skateboarding in Dota 2, right? Like, we've seen some pretty crazy stuff. But then you get to, like, you know, when they released the free-to-play tournament, or documentary, and we got a ward that was shaped like a video camera. Is that something that you guys as content creators look at and go, oh, that's a bit of a deviation from Dota 2? Or is that something where it's like, hey, whatever sells the item, you know, it is what it is? Because, I mean, they didn't make that to reflect Dota 2. They made that to reflect a movie.
Like, well, at first, when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's kind of not really in the universe of Dota 2. But when you see it in the game, it just, like the portal wards and stuff like that.
It's true.
I don't know, I didn't really pay attention to it. I just wanted to kill it and get my 50 gold. So.
Right? Yeah. And see how people label it. I forgot which player it is that named it Brazzer's Camera, but he's pretty popular for that one. What Grand Grant, the king of all trolls, wants to know if you would consider making an IX Walrus courier for the NEL, which I thought sounded hilarious.
Well, no.
Like, it'd be like an IX Mike, but like as a walrus, you know? And
as a walrus?
Yeah, it'd be hilarious.
It'd be hilariously downvoted on the Reddit.
that is, well, what doesn't get downvoted on Reddit these days? So when you talk about the business of designing for Dota 2, do you think that this is something that, as we move forward, is a sustainable career option for an artist, or is this becoming increasingly more just something to do as a hobby outside of your other artwork.
Yeah, it's definitely, even for me, it's become a hot, like a semi, like a what do you call it? Self, not part time.
Yeah.
It's like part time work, making stuff for Dota 2, even though I do it full time. But I will soon, like, because of the bottleneck of the workshop, I'm having to branch out and do other things, not Dota 2, work related, so that I can continue to survive. But yeah, right now it's pretty hard for like a newcomer to the workshop to think about sustaining themselves unless they put in a lot of work. So there's one artist out there. His name's Chiz. He did the Omni Knight set with the really cool Omni Knight set. He did the Queen of Pain set and a couple of chests back. He's done a whole bunch of cool stuff. He did the Silencer set that everyone hates.
Oh, okay.
But the one that looks like Kunko, apparently.
Okay.
But he did, like, he asked me a few months ago, I think it was last year or the year before. He asked me some advice for the workshop community, and I give him the same advice. I'm like, you have to do like a whole bunch of sets, like 5 or 6 sets, and then you have to do them like 2 weeks. Like put them up on the workshop, like at least one every week or one every 2 weeks or something like that. You have to be consistent and you have to do a whole bunch. And he did that. He actually did that. I didn't think he did that, but he actually did it. And he's now got a whole bunch of stuff into the game. He's going through tournaments as well. And he Skyped me a couple of weeks ago and he said, dude, if I like that advice was so good. So yeah, he was able to like work his ass off and actually get rewarded because it happened to be that he's also a really good artist.
Right.
And it just worked. It just worked for him. And it's very hard right now to do that, I think.
Okay.
But it is possible. But it's like, yeah. I don't know. It's sustainable for some, not sustainable for others. It's just how you work.
It sounds a little bit like the other avenues of content creation, casting, highlighting, podcasting. There's enough that you can, if you really ground it out, you could probably make a living at it, but you're never going to live in a mansion and drive a Ferrari.
Pretty much.
Interesting.
Well, I'm not. Unless, there's enough workshops out there that you can do different workshops. So you can do Dota 2, you could do Chivalry, you could do CSGO. And then you might be able to, live off doing all three of those,
Right.
I think. I hear CSGO does make a lot of money.
And it seems like it'd be much easier to design for CSGO since their stuff's, super
Textures.
easy. Yeah, it's textures and that's it. And I suppose there is the side of things where you could say, I guess, with enough great sets put out there, and you're probably getting close to a point like this, where Valve could approach you and say, we want to bring you on staff to be our Arcana designer. And then, there's a great job.
I don't think so. I don't think Valve has a history of hiring workshop artists, because workshop artists have more value as workshop artists
that's a good point.
than they do if they work at Valve. Unless the workshop artists specifically want to work at Valve, and they apply and Valve likes them, I think that's how it works.
That makes sense. Valve, great at protecting that cash. Now, they did the TI sets at TI4, and there were some designer sets on there that I think were designed specifically, or really specifically, so that set creators got credit for it. Did you have an item in one of those chests that was in TI4?
I didn't have an item in the chest because after the Dazzle set was released, and it was only for sale in that chest for 1 month.
Yeah.
And then it was obsolete. There was no other way to get it. People were messaging me all the time going, how do I get the Dazzle set?
Yeah.
How do I get the Dazzle set? I'm like, at TI4, Valve asked us if we would like an item bundled with our, the card things that they sell, the autograph cards. And I said, look, I have a Drow set on the store. I have a Miracle Naga on the store that I really want to go into, in the workshop that I really want to go on the store. But so many people asking me about the Dazzle set that I have to put this through. So because it was a resubmission, I don't think it went into the chest.
Okay, so that was with the signature card, I think it was, right? The Dazzle set. Because it was a distinct TI situation, did they give that to you guys 100%, or did they stick to the same? You get 25.
Same.
That
Same
sucks.
25.
Okay.
Yeah.
You think for something like TI, they'd be like, "Hey, just because you've done so much for us, here's a 80% share for this particular instance." But I guess not. So, Kado guy says you gave him a card.
Yeah,
That's pretty nice of you.
they did give us like
That's true.
a bunch of like a stack of cards for free that we
just
could just
give away.
hand out, which was really good and saved my wallet. I didn't have to buy like 100 cards.
Right. No, that's that. I mean, that is. I guess that's a fair exchange to a certain extent. They give you a cut, plus they give you a bunch of free stuff that you designed anyway to give away to people. So, here's some free copies of something that you made to give to people. You're welcome. That's funny. So that. Is there anything else about that side of the business, as we sort of come to the end of the show, we've been talking for a little while now, that you feel like is maybe misunderstood by the Dota 2 community at large? Or you feel like if you had a chance to sit Dota 2 down and grab all of us players who use cosmetics to complain about them constantly by the ears and say, what would you say to us?
God, I don't know. Don't stop complaining to cosmetics for thinking outside the box. I think because some cosmetic artists, like I went through it as well, and Chiz just went through it with the Silencer set, and a few other artists have done it too. We get to a point when we make Dota 2 items where we feel like we're not being pushed enough anymore, so we try and do something really crazy, and we just want to see what happens. It's like we just want to try it, and we just want to. It's either a troll or it's like a legitimate thing that we're trying to do and see if it works. And a lot of the time, we get a lot of bad sort of feedback from the community about it. And yeah, it's like be just a little bit gentler. But yeah, we can take it though, which is a good thing.
If you had a chance, if you could choose any hero in the game, whether or not they have items or design sets available, I guess I should say, because some of them aren't on the workshop yet, from what I understand, or can't be designed for. Which hero have you always wanted to design for?
Right now it's Winter Wyvern. Like I really and Winter Wyvern and Phoenix. I really want to do those two. And a shout out to AUI because Curtis really wants me to do THD and Visage. I'm like I can't. No. Can't make him.
Pretty sweet. So if you could do a Winter Wyvern, I can't say the word, I never could. If you can do a Winter Dragon or a Phoenix, do you have something in mind if you ever get the nod to do that? And is it like, what are you thinking? Let us into the brain of AnuxinaMoon.
So for Winter Wyvern, you know those? Do you play D&D?
Yes.
So yeah, obviously. So you know the gold dragons in the old like Dungeons and Dragons books.
Yeah.
And they had like the really big wings that went all the way to the tail, and they looked really majestic. I want to do something like that for Winter Wyvern. And for Phoenix, just more wings.
More wings. Like just more.
Just more of them. Just cover it.
Just cover them with wings. A 16-wing Phoenix comes rising from the ashes. That's funny.
Yeah. Well, actually, the first company that I made was called Coalescent Studios, and my the icon for that was a 6-winged Phoenix, I think, or 4-winged Phoenix. I can't remember.
So if you get to do a Phoenix or heroes like that who have state changes, is that something where you are then able to access and design changes to the second state? So like when he goes into his Phoenix Ball of Rebirth, is that something that you're usually able to work with as well? Or is that something that's not available or too difficult to sort of create a second state for these things?
A lot of those things are made by are dictated by Valve. So like for Terrorblade, his metamorphosis, we can change that because Valve gave us the ability to change that. It's just all about that, really. Like I think the Phoenix Ball is a particle effect anyway.
Gotcha.
So
interesting.
Only cool particle guys can do that.
Are there cool particle guys outside of Valve? Like there's specific studios that are particle masters.
Dota Effects is like, and Abyss Effects, those are the two main ones that I know that do really good particle effects.
So, to wrap this up, and I think you probably get asked this 6 million times per stream when you're designing items on Twitch, how does one get started in workshop design? Would you recommend they start with Dota 2 or something else? Or would you recommend they just go buy a damn canvas and do something completely different?
Oh man, it's so hard because it's like, where's your skill at? If you can 3D model, if you can 3D text, if you know how to put things in, if you know how to make a game art thing, yes, Dota 2 is really great to like all the documentation's there. Um, or like there's places where you can get help and everything, and just try and make something and see how it goes. TF2 is also a really good place. It's a lot more simpler than Dota 2 to make items for, because it just doesn't have that high poly sort of asset that you need to create to make the normal maps. So that's a whole like section of your pipeline that you can just throw away because you're working on TF2. CS:GO, if you even want to try something simpler, try that. And yeah, then yeah,
Well,
there's like resources everywhere. There's even Steam guides. Like there's a Steam guide by Lenny Agony, Vlad, like YouTube videos. There's so much out there that you can just Google
and just start
just
it
go,
up.
yeah, pretty much.
We live in a generation where you can do anything you want as long as you have Google or access
Yeah.
to it. That's interesting. Well, I want to thank you for being on the show. I appreciate you coming in and doing the interview. For those of you who don't know, I've been trying to get AnuxinaMoon on the show for, I don't know, what, 2.5, 3 months now? Maybe
Yeah.
longer. I started haunting her stream a while back ago, and she kept saying no. And then finally I went to Ryan Editor and was like, Ryan, make her do the show. And I think Ryan started hounding you for me on my behalf and finally convinced you to do it. So I appreciate you finally breaking down to the begging of myself and Ryan to get you on here. And the reason for that, guys, is my goal with the show is I love Pro Dota. You all know that. But I love the Dota scene. I think meeting the different members of our community and the different aspects of what makes Dota great is important. And let's be honest, a lot of folks bash on hats and say it's killing Dota, but at the end of the day, the fact is people love having different looks, having my hero feel like my hero personally and being different from every other Crystal Maiden I see played is a really cool experience. And I think that that's something that we don't give content creators enough credit for. When I say content, I mean item creators. For is adding that experience, right? I have a courier who is sort of my call sign. I put animations and gems and all kinds of fun stuff on it so that every time I'm in a game and it comes out, people go, Toffees must be playing support in this match. And I think that that's an important part of our community that really makes us feel connected to it. So I appreciate you coming. For those of you listening on the podcast or live, I appreciate you guys being here for the show. Don't forget, if you're going to host a website, do it at namecheap.com. And this is me asking nicely, guys. I was on .p, it'll actually be live tomorrow, and they said, I said, you guys have so many iPod or podcast reviews. How do you do it? I don't have like nearly as many. And they said we beg for it. So I'm going to go out there and say, guys, if you listen to this on the podcast on iTunes, please review it. Please give it a rating. That way I actually can get to the featured podcast and we can continue to grow the show. So that is mucho appreciated if you guys would do that. Any last words on Nuxinema before we log out for the night?
No. I have nothing.
All
Nothing.
right. I'm gonna give a shout out to Ryan Editor on her behalf and anybody else who's involved with the making process. As he's been like championing you in chat the entire time. So Ryan, classic support structure. That said, guys, we really appreciate you being here tonight. Remember, you can support the show at patreon.com/Toffees. Anything is helpful, and you can get the super swag mug that I'm holding up right now on screen. If I can find the camera. There it is. The Coffee with Toffees coffee mug on the channel just below you. Hit follow, hit sub, live the dream. Guys, it's been great spending the evening with you. AnuxinaMoon, I'm getting really good at saying that, by the way. It has been, right? It has been wonderful spending the evening with you as well. And guys, if you missed it at the front of the show, her name comes from The Mummy, so she is a big Brendan Fraser fan, is what I take away from the back end of the interview. I don't know if that's actually true. Are you a big Brendan Fraser fan?
Not really, actually.
No.
I used to be when I was a kid.
Who is?
George of the Jungle was pretty legit.
That was legit. Fair point. Well said. And we will leave it at that, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a great night. And as always, Toffees out.